We continue to get reaction to what is arguably one of the most surprising election victories in U.S. political history. Debt rescue CEO Neil Roets believes Trump's election may negatively affect South African consumers. He joins us now. Neil, thanks very much for coming in this afternoon. You're pointing to indebted South Africans in particular, whom you say will suffer probably worse than many other people following on from this Trump victory. Why these consumers specifically?
Well, South African consumers in general are very over-indebted. If you look at the stats provided by the National Credit Act or regulator, almost half of all credit-active consumers are over-indebted. Now, we feel that this is definitely going to have a negative impact on the South African consumers because something like this will definitely have an impact on the South African economy because of the fact that the South African economy is dependent on global economies and the American economy, which will definitely be affected by something like this. And then furthermore, if you look at the AGOA agreement between the US and South Africa, which created more than 60,000 jobs. These are industries in the automotive and agricultural industries, and exports might also be affected in this regard and therefore directly affect the jobs in South Africa.
I'm also looking at Republicans themselves and watching their sort of reaction to Donald Trump while he was on the campaign trail. Some of them were pretty horrified by him and did not want him to go any further in this election, but here we are today. Now that he's in office, will he necessarily toe the line that is required to keep the global economy in a relatively mellow state?
Well, we can just hope that he does that because he made a lot of radical statements during his campaign. For instance, we all know about the wall that he was going to erect between Mexico and America. But obviously, now he's got to step up and do the job, and hopefully he will realize that he's a very good businessman, and this is politics. And he's now not running his own company and just looking after his own affairs, but he's now running a whole country. And I think you can't take the same chances in those two positions. So we hope that he will step up.
We also know he's likely to repeal a number of Obama's policies. What does that mean for stability?
Well, it's never good to change policies, and with regards to stability, it will never be good. But it remains to be seen that whether it's going to have any positive impacts or not, and we can only hope so because, there's more than 50% of Americans voted for him, and there must be some reason behind that, and we hope that he can prove himself by, if changing the policies, doing that. And creating a positive outcome and not negative, as a lot of people might expect.
Neil, of course, while we've been very carefully watching the U.S. election results, ratings agency Moody's says South African banks are going to have a problem recouping debt from their customers. Exactly what does that mean?
Yeah, it's exactly referring to bad loans, meaning that loans that cannot be repaid. And they said that, we're going to see an increase of those loans for the next 12 to 18 months. Now, that's obviously a very negative thing for us in light of the fact that we're going to be graded, next month, and hopefully that's not going to affect us to such an extent that we're going to be downgraded, which at this point seems very likely. And that's also going to have a very negative effect towards the consumers in South Africa because of the fact that that will also just have the rand plummet and cause the prices of other goods and services to go up, and therefore affecting consumers even more.
It is worrying indeed. Thanks very much for coming in and talking to us about that this afternoon. Debt Rescue CEO Neil Roets. More of the day's top stories when afternoon news continues. Stay with us.